Sanshegay Peart is a very easygoing person. She's an extrovert. She's very vocal. She's out there. She's outgoing. She's willing to help at whatever cost. That's basically her. So growing up with this disease was super hard. It took some adjusting on my part to learn to navigate, and that I wasn't able to actually participate and go out there like normal persons would have to be careful where I step, how I step, what I do. So it was tricky.
Osteogenesis imperfecta is what is known as a heritable disease, which means it can be passed on from your parents. It has over 150 to 250 different mutations that cause this disease, and therefore the spectrum of the expressibility of this disease is vast. It primarily affects type 1 collagen, which is the most common type of collagen in the body. Type 1 collagen is in all the connective tissues, it's in the bones, it's in your eye, it's in the ligaments in your back, in your knees, in your ankles, all the joints. And therefore, if you have abnormalities of collagen, your bones may not mineralize properly because the enzymes that put the calcium into the bone don't get a chance to work properly because everything there is disordered. The ligaments may become lax and rubbery because they're not formed properly. The incidence of osteogenesis imperfecta is estimated in 1 in every 20,000 births. So in Jamaica, there are at least 60 to 100 people living with this disease. A person with osteogenesis imperfecta could pass this on to his child or her child very easily because it is known as an autosomal dominant in most cases, which means once you have it, you've got a 50% chance of passing it on to your child.
So I'm the first and only that I know of. I know there's another young man who is somewhat linked to my family. He's sick, but I'm not sure with what.
A diagnosis of bone fragility, as in osteogenesis imperfecta, is usually devastating for the family because those children are never going to be quite normal. They will tend to break easily. A simple twist and fall would lead to fractures that a normal or ordinary child would probably not sustain. And therefore, these children need to be protected. They are banned from taking part in sporting activities and games. They can't run, they can't jump. In extreme cases, they might not even be able to take part in swimming.
So osteogenesis imperfecta and school don't go together that well. Reason being is you break easily and often. So because of that, most times is spent inside a hospital. For me personally though, school wasn't really that great until high school. So between basic school to primary, I was in and out, breaking often. I wasn't really there. Wow, high school was exciting, for want of a better word, but not in the beginning because I'm just getting used to actually being in a school full time. So it took some adjustments on my part to get used to the fact that I'm inside high school and I've reached this far, to be frank. And then I was using a crutch at the time, so it was hard to navigate, especially amongst the crowd. You're so small and the crowds are huge. So high school was exciting about 9th grade when it took off for me. That's when I really got into who I am and the things that I like. Teasing is that right through the process thing. It's not just high school. It happens every day. Even now, as old as I am, it still happens. Some of the names that I've been called are the most common ones. Shorty, midget, dwarf. Some of them not so nice because I don't like the terms because they don't necessarily refer to who I am and what I am. So it's it's a little bit disheartening to hear at times.
Sancho, like most patients with osteogenesis imperfecta, sustained long bone fractures. Those were relatively simple to treat, and she was able to get reasonably good function of her bones in the legs and the arms. The problem with Sancho is because of her ligamentous laxity. She had weakness in the ligaments in her spine, and she ended up with a pretty significant scoliosis, and she developed an extreme S-shaped curve in her spine. But her bones were extremely fragile, and therefore we could not instrument her, that is to put screws or plates or wires or rods in her spine, because the bones would simply not be able to sustain the implants. The implants would literally rip out of the bone. So we were forced to try to fuse her without instrumentation. So basically, we took her to theater, broke her bones in about 30 places, laid on bone graft along the edges, and tried desperately to keep her on strict bed rest for 3 months. That was an exercise in near futility because Sancho wanted to get up. And we had many an argument on the ward as to whether or not she was going to get up today or next week. It was a very trying time for all of us, because if you've ever tried to hold a 10-year-old or a 12-year-old immobile in bed, not moving, on traction, on both the chin and the legs, you realize that this is tantamount to torture. And she would have none of it. But we succeeded somehow, and she has not a great outcome, but at least her spine will not get worse over time. However, as a result of her fixation or fusion, Sancho is now shorter than average.
So throughout my journey, were there moments I didn't really love myself? Yes. With osteogenesis imperfecta, it's hard to grasp when you're small and you want to do things like normal people would. So you want to go out and have fun, but you have to be sitting at home, or your friends having a level of fun that you personally can't go out there and have. So it was hard, because then you start to wonder, why did this happen to me? Is there something that I did wrong? Why me? And then as a child, you don't fully grasp that the idea that you were born with it and not necessarily something that is a curse per se. So it was hard in terms of learning to love myself now, and I had to go through phases and say, all right, listen, first thing, you need to accept that this is who you are. You really can't change it. There's not much you can do. You just have to figure out ways around the system. So if it is that you have a problem going upstairs normally, try going up it back way or something like that. You have to navigate in order to be able to find yourself and to understand exactly what it is, that osteogenesis, and how it fits into your life. Do I love myself? No. Not completely, if I'm to be honest. There are moments when you would look at yourself and say, like, you're worried or you're frightened or you don't like what you're seeing. And then there are other moments when you say, damn, you look good, girl, So it's still a learning process for me, but in terms of growth, no, to say the thing that I love the most about myself is my personality. I've managed to remain as bubbly as possible when not in pain, and can manage to actually be bubbly. So to me, it would be my personality. The thing I love the most about myself.
The only bright spot for these children is that when they reach puberty, The secondary sex hormones, the estrogens in the case of girls, the testosterone in the case of boys, kicks in. And this makes their bones thicker and stronger, so they're less likely to break after puberty. However, as they get older and they become osteoporotic over the age of 60, they may tend to fracture more easily than an elderly adult. A problem may arise with women with osteogenesis imperfecta who get pregnant because the fetus will literally draw the calcium out of their bones so it can grow and develop. And so pregnant women with osteogenesis imperfecta are far more likely to have fractures or sustain fractures soon after birth.
So fractures and scars is a tricky question because then I have to count how many there are, but from the waist down is where I've broken the most bones. From the upper body now, I've broken the shoulders and the rib cages. I think 2 of the rib cages. The legs now I've broken about 8 times, different places. I remember specifically there was one where I knew I'm not supposed to try and jump. I can't jump. I couldn't run back then. And, regular Chinese kids, right? So, and I wanted to try it out. And my mother did say to me, if anything happens, you're not to say anything. I'm not going to be going anywhere with you. I did break the leg and I had to just sit there for about an hour before I could say I broke the leg. I had to just sit there and she was so mad. So one of the scars is I had to get muscle reconstruction. And I think for me, that would have been the most difficult in terms of pain threshold and going through that process. The reason why it's so vivid to me is the fact that it took a while to get the muscle reconstruction. So for a few years, I wasn't able to walk. And then it took a while to get to the point where I can do the muscle reconstruction, mostly because I had to be waiting on a machine at the time, which there were some complications with getting it here in terms of getting it in Jamaica. But when it was finally done, it felt like a relief for a brief moment, because shortly after I got the news, like a couple of hours after, I got the news that my grandfather died. So that on a whole was a different level of pain in itself to be going through this and then to be going through this and then to get that news. It was really hard, to say the least. But for a while I just kind of opted out of it, like I didn't really want to go any further with it. And then so I was like, it was hard because then I had to come to grips with that. I wanted to do this surgery for him. I haven't seen me walk in so many years. And then and not just that, but to find out hours after you do a surgery, so such a monumental thing to find out that he's not there, and he was one of my greatest supporters in terms of family members. So after all of that, do I still feel pain? Yes, it's never going to ever go away because it's a lifelong disease. So, and there's other complications that comes with it, like scoliosis. So you'll never ever stop feeling pain. Coping with it is easier because I now know my threshold level. So I know what I can stand, and I know when something is wrong compared to when just feeling or regular discomfort. So what does this project mean to me? It means a whole lot. It's a project that I've been wanting to do. Not necessarily in this format. At first I thought maybe a book or something. But then this idea presented itself, and I thought that it would be another interesting aspect of how to present my story. Alright, so for me and this project and the symbols used, they represent who I am, the process that I've been through, and how I view myself. For example, the lotus flower which is a flower that can basically grow in whatever situation you put it into, which is what I'm saying about myself. Whatever situation I'm in, I'm able to grow and learn something from that situation. The roses is a very delicate flower. It is my favorite because it's so delicate. It has to be handled with care, but it has the opportunity to be dangerous depending on how you handle it. So, biggest life lesson is your circumstances don't define who you are. To actually understand yourself, you first have to understand that things do happen on a regular basis, and there are things that you might not be able to control. So you have to learn to adjust. I love that word so much to your situation, and it does not define you. The choices you make inside the situations that you are is what will help to define who you are. What I want people to take away from this project is the fact that nothing is as is. So life is not as it is to you now. Your circumstances won't last, just like the broken infinity. It will end at some point. You just need to understand that during your circumstances, you need to choose. You need to make choices that will define who you are, and that you must always bear in mind that no matter what, your choices will have a consequences, and you have to be able, or you have to be willing to accept those circumstances no matter what. So, who is my biggest hero other than my grandfather? I have more than one, but to say from the top of my head would be my mother. The strength it takes to actually raise an osteogenesis child is absolutely amazing, and she has done it effortlessly. We don't always get along, but despite that, I don't know if I'd be able to manage if I was in her situation or her circumstances.
Hi, my name is Dan, so I am a doctor at the orthopedic department of the Bustamante Children's Hospital. I've been here since the year 2001. I first met Sanshegay Peart when she was a little girl. She came to us with multiple fractures of her long bones and was diagnosed as having osteogenesis imperfecta. Her management was extremely difficult because Sancho was a very sprightly little girl who did not let her disease keep her back from doing exactly what she wanted to do, which was really usually at odds at what we wanted her to do.
I am Sanshegay. I'm 27 years old, and this is Behind It All, her journey, the Sanshegay Project.